The head of the Catholic Church has called Turkey a bridge between religions and appealed for unity between cultures on the first day of a delicate trip to the country. Pope Benedict's every gesture during the four-day visit is being closely watched after remarks he made back in September caused anger across the Muslim world. He quoted remarks of a Byzantine emperor criticising Islam. A little over an hour ago, he delivered a speech alongside the head of the Islamic Affairs head in Turkey. And right now he's meeting ambassadors at the Vatican Embassy in the Turkish capital, Ankara. These pictures coming in live. In a moment we'll be speaking to our correspondent in Istanbul. But first, Michael Sullivan has been following day one.
On the evening of his arrival in Ankara, Pope Benedict met formally his sternest critic, Ali Padakoglu, chief of Turkey's Religious Affairs Directorate, who delivered his reply to the Pope's speech in Rome in September, which quoted a Byzantine emperor describing Islam as violent and irrational. He said, "The so-called conviction that the sword is used to expand Islam in the world and growing Islamophobia hurts all Muslims." Pope Benedict pressed on with his praise for the past glories of Turkey and the need for unity with Christianity in seeking peace in the world.
Christians and Muslims belong to the family of those who believe in the one God and who, according to their respective traditions, trace their ancestry to Abraham. This human and spiritual unity in our origins and our destiny impels us to seek a common path as we play our part in the quest for fundamental values so characteristic of the people of our time. As men and women of religion, we are challenged by the widespread longing for justice, development, solidarity, freedom, security, peace, defense of life, protection of the environment and of the resources of the earth. This is because we too, while respecting the legitimate autonomy of temporal affairs, have a specific contribution to offer in the search for proper solutions to these pressing questions.
Rarely, if ever, has a pope left Rome on his way to visit another country, knowing that a prickly reception awaited him at the end of his journey. For a while, his visit was in some doubt as Turkish Muslims took exception to his speech in which he quoted a Byzantine emperor who said that Islam was violent and irrational. Speaking to journalists as his plane headed for Ankara, Pope Benedict told them that Europeans had to rethink their secular reasoning and join with Turkey in reconstructing openness and tolerance. But it was to a background of hostility in Turkey that he stepped from his plane at Ankara airport to begin his mission. Even as plans for the visit were being laid, the Turkish Prime Minister, with an eye on next year's presidential and parliamentary elections, had at first indicated that he would not meet the Pope, agreeing only at the last minute to meet him for brief talks at Ankara airport. There, the Pope told him that he had withdrawn his earlier remarks that Turkey's Muslim identity disqualified it from membership of the European Union. Thousands of riot police were in Ankara in anticipation of a repeat of Sunday's large demonstration against the Pope's visit, but they had little to contend with but a small demonstration by a right-wing Islamic party whose spokesman said they were there to show Turkey's national dignity. Pope Benedict's first official act was to visit the mausoleum of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, writing in a guest book a message calling Turkey a meeting point of different religions and cultures and a bridge between Asia and Europe. Michael Sullivan, Al Jazeera.
The Pope will spend Tuesday night in Ankara before heading to Ephesus and then on to Istanbul. There he'll meet Patriarch Bartholomew I, leader of the world's 300 million Orthodox Christians. Well, let's go over to Istanbul and our correspondent Barnaby Phillips. You've just heard him at the Vatican Embassy, Barnaby, speaking. He was at the Religious Affairs Directorate earlier. Do you think what he said there was enough to lessen the anger towards him and to perhaps make peace with the Muslim world and Turks in general?
I don't know if it will accomplish all those things, but yes, I think you're right. It will lessen the anger and it will satisfy some people here in Turkey. But I fear, for the Pope's sake, perhaps not all. Talking to people here in the Ayıp neighborhood, a conservative Muslim neighborhood of central Istanbul, people were looking for something a little bit more. They were looking for an unequivocal apology, a retraction of that now infamous September speech, and I don't think that was likely at all. And I should say, just flicking through the Turkish TV channels over the last half hour or so, more weight is being given to Mr. Ali Badakoglu's remarks just prior to the Pope speaking, and those veiled criticisms of the Pope when he said that leaders should be careful not to promote Islamophobia and not to spread a message that Islam was a religion that was spread through the sword. Obviously veiled criticisms, if you like, of the Pope, and those remarks are getting a lot of play in the Turkish media right now.
Well, I was actually going to bring that in because Mr. Bakakoglu had been his fiercest critic during those comments in September. Do you think what he said tonight was actually either a side swipe or a bit of a dig that we haven't forgotten what you said and we still want an apology?
I think he has given up on getting a complete apology, but it certainly was a swipe. We met with him in Ankara a week ago, and I could feel his anger, no doubt about that. He has been outspoken on this issue ever since September, and he was quite clear with us. He said that this trip may help promote dialogue, but it wasn't going to solve all the problems between the Pope and the Islamic world in the wake of the September speech.
Well, Barnaby Phillips in Istanbul. There we will leave it, and we will follow the Pope's movements in Turkey over the next 3 to 4 days. Thank you. A Chadian military plane has been shot down near the eastern town of Abeche as the conflict between rebels and government forces intensifies. Meanwhile, army troops surrounded N'Djamena, concerned that rebels will try to take over the Chad's capital city. Let's take a look at the conflict in more detail and the rebels fighting the government. They're a collection of several armed factions, all united by the desire to overthrow Chad's president, Idriss Déby. They accused of him of corruption, alleging he's fixed elections to keep himself in power since 1991. The group has been able to exploit the Darfur conflict in neighbouring Sudan, establishing bases in the troubled region from where they've been able to launch attacks. And President Déby, according to his allies of Sudan, has been backing Chad's rebel alliance. At the weekend, rebel forces briefly took control of the eastern town of Abeche, and there was an outbreak of mass looting. Al Jazeera has obtained exclusive pictures of what happened. Gabi Benezes is our reporter there.
Amid the chaos, rebels fired shots into the air to try to restore some sort of order. The Palais de Justice was ransacked. Anything that could be carried was stolen. Even shutters were ripped from the windows. It's not clear how many casualties there were. Civilians and wounded soldiers from both sides relied on help from aid agencies. These exclusive pictures show the heavily armed fighters from the Union of Forces for Democracy and Development taking control of the centre of town at the weekend.
We are forces of democracy. Our aim is to overthrow the dictator Déby.
By Monday, government forces had retaken Abeche, but the town bears the scars of heavy fighting.
Abeche is now calm, but here on the streets of N'Djamena you can see armed soldiers patrolling the city, and you can hear the sound of jet fighters as they land in the airport. You'd expect the people here to be tense and frightened, but in fact they're going about as normal. Conflict for them has become a part of life.
Conflicts come and conflicts go. It's all the same to us. Here in N'Djamena, we're not at risk from the rebels.
But the government is taking the rebel threat seriously and has deployed troops around the capital ready to counter an attack. Gabi Benezes, Al Jazeera, N'Djamena in Chad.
A Syrian gunman has been killed during a clash with Syrian police at the border with Lebanon. The Syrian government has named him as Omar Abdullah, the leader of an Islamic militant group, Tawhid and Jihad. There was an explosion after a gun battle with Syrian security forces at Yabous, 45 kilometres west of Damascus. A new development in the case of the poisoned former Russian spy in the United Kingdom. One of the men, former KGB agent Alexander Litvinenko, met before he became ill, is now himself under police protection. Mario Scramella, who's Italian and an expert on the Soviet-era espionage, met Litvinenko in a London sushi restaurant the day Litvinenko became ill from radiation poisoning.